Hi, Dan Thies back again for Link Liberation version 3. This is week 1, defining your persona. This is the second video, market tiers and bridge building. In this video, we'll discuss the important concept of market tiers, how to figure out where you are in the tiered market structure that we use in Link Liberation, and how to figure out the right kind of topics that you're going to use depending on what tier market you're using. There is good news and bad news. It's not always the best thing to be in a first tier market or the worst thing to be in a third tier market. Speaking of third tier markets, these can be a little bit more challenging. So we'll talk about the linked concepts of topic bridging and demographic bridging to help you understand how to approach these markets and build an audience. First off, I want to be very clear about what kind of market we're talking about when we talk about the market that you're in. It's not necessarily about what you sell. It's not necessarily about what you do. It's the market that you're in and who you're selling to. So if you sell baby shoes, you're selling in the baby products market. If you do SEO services as a consultant, you're in the online marketing business. Wedding favors is another example where they're dealing with the wedding market, and there are other types of things that you could do or sell in that same market. Credit cards are the personal finance market, etc. And having more than one site and even more than one business within the same market makes perfect sense. And you can actually get a little bit of leverage out of that with a lot of what we do. We talk about 3 tiers of markets. The first tier markets are usually the easiest, the third tier markets are usually the hardest, and most folks taking this course are going to be dealing with second tier markets. Now, all of this will make a lot more sense if you've already watched the videos from the Link Liberation 3 launch promotion, which you can find under the Extras section of the Link Liberation 3 on our members portal. In particular, you'd like to watch the first 2 videos for this section of the course. In a first tier market, the people who are interested in information about a topic are also very good potential customers, clients, or users of your product or service. For example, SEO consultants can simply talk about SEO online or talk about online marketing and find people that are interested in having someone do it for them. If you sell chess books, you can talk about the game of chess, how to play, you can talk about famous chess players, or you can even track the news about chess tournaments that are going on in international competition. Doing link liberation in a first tier market, like a lot of other kinds of marketing, is very easy to play because it's a lot easier to attract prospects to you, it's a lot easier to find them, and it's a lot easier to know what they want you to say. Most of the time in first tier markets, you're going to want to define a topic or a set of topics that are a little bit broader than just what you do. So, for example, an SEO consultant can talk about more than just SEO. You can do a lot of the low-level content, what we call stories and commentary, and we'll explain the content pyramid in just a bit here. Those kinds of low-level content will often touch on broader topics like other areas of online marketing, from traffic to conversion to analytics, and you name it. Higher level content, the things that you're going to do for link bait, are more likely to focus on SEO specifically. So you're going to have a lot of things that you talk about that aren't just SEO, but when it comes to the content on your site, the focus is going to shift to much more specific things about SEO, and particularly the kind of things that are going to attract the right kind of clients. So if you focus on big brands, you'll talk more about big brand type SEO issues, and if you focus on local clients, you'll talk about the local SEO issues. In a second tier market, the topics that we're going to talk about will certainly imply membership in a segment of your target market, but they're not necessarily the most likely customers in every case. Some may become customers, clients, or users, and others will not, but they will still contribute to your online marketing and link building efforts. Some examples of second tier markets would include things like baby shoes, where you'd want to talk about topics around babies, parenting, targeting the parents of babies, but you don't want to be talking all about shoes. Shoe-related content could work potentially with this market as part of the overall mix, and we'll dig into some examples of different markets and different topics in the practice module coming. For second tier markets, we are going to be moving from broad to specific topics, but we really need to be especially careful to draw a box around the topics that we're going to be talking about. So we want to target an audience segment or a specific topic, and as we build a persona, and there's much more coming on this, you would want to find a persona that you can create where people would follow that person based on the topics that they're creating. So, for example, people might follow a particular person because they are seen as an expert in French cooking, if that's what they're interested in. and that person would not logically talk about very many other topics that people might be interested in. So following through with our example on baby shoes, you might want to talk about baby health and how to teach the baby to walk and talk and things like that, and mix in a little bit of that shoe-related content, like maybe something like why babies should never wear sandals. I don't know if that's actually true, but it's an example of a topic anyway. Something bad would be going too far-reaching in the topics that you're going after. Things like talking about baby health, but also talking about stocks and sports and politics. Those things are more likely to turn off people in your audience rather than keeping people focused on listening, paying attention, and sharing the stories that you share with them. Now, almost everyone listening to me right now is going to be dealing with a first or second tier market. And there's good news and bad news in either case. In first tier markets, it's certainly easier to figure out the topics, and the folks in your audience are at least more likely to buy, or at least better prospects. However, on the other hand, you also need to create more feature length, full length, and high end content in most cases to really satisfy your audience and to convert that audience into clients than you would in a second tier market. In most second tier markets, less high end content is required to build an audience, drive traffic, and even sell stuff. So stories, the links that we share, abstracting, and commentary, and we'll get to what those are later, those things can be extremely effective. So you're able to do the job with a lot less high-end content having to be created. So in many ways, the second-tier markets are actually easier. And then there are those pesky third-tier markets, and these are things like business-to-business type markets, manufacturing, corporate stuff. A lot of business services where the target market's only common interest is that they are viable prospects for your product or service. And yet, even no matter how far this goes, there are still trade shows, trade publications, trade organizations, and stuff like that. If there are people selling leads that you can buy anywhere that would be even remotely targeted, then there are topics that you can address. So in third tier markets, we use a technique called topic bridging a lot more than we have to in other markets. So you could talk about business, management, marketing, design, typography, all kinds of things that would be of interest to some people and also relevant for someone who is in a business. Your in-house designers or developers might blog about changes that they're making to the site, and all these things can create links and interest in the conversations that you're participating in. There are certainly also, in a lot of what appear to be third-tier markets, there are actually second-tier topics they can use. So, for example, if you're selling to C-level type people or executive people in larger companies, Fortune 500s and things like that, talking about higher-end management stuff, Harvard Business Review kind of stuff, those are topics that you can get into. Those are conversations you can join, and there are people out there that they're following that you can engage in conversation with. I am personally not a big fan of copping out and using we'll just talk about marketing on our business blog and that will attract marketers to talk to us. It works, but even in the weirdest of third tier markets and in niches, industry news and things like that can work and grow. And we'll talk later on as we get into how you expand your reach in social. There are lots of ways that you can find those people that are attending the trade shows and things like that. There are lots of ways that you can find the people that are in your industry and become the place where they talk about their industry. And of course, you can also use things like market research, surveys, and stories about who's moving and shaking, which means who lost their job and who took their job. And this takes us to the idea of demographic bridging. Think about all those people who go to the trade shows. They go and tweet about it. No matter what the event is, there's going to be one or two or just a handful of hashtags, and often one, because often the events will create a hashtag that people use on Twitter to talk about it. So if they're at the big lumber convention, they're probably going to be tweeting out with things like #LumberCon. They also post pictures to Flickr and places like that, TweetPic. And you can post content around that. You can gather up all those pictures. You can do roundups. You can do polls and surveys. Who had the best trade show booth? You make it about those people that are traveling around from show to show, and you can sort of gather the industry together. You make it fun. You make it social, but it's something that doesn't necessarily happen overnight, but you can actually create a community where maybe one didn't exist before, or at least create a resource for that community where they all know to go. And the more events you support in this, the more events you talk about, the more and more that audience will grow. And if there is already a community, you can actually leverage that as well. We will spend a lot more time on third tier markets as we move through the course and quite a bit of time on that in the practice module to come. So for now, give yourself a little bit of exercise and review here. Think about what market are you in? So the examples again. If you sell wedding favors, you're in the wedding market. If you do SEO, you're in the online marketing business. What market are you in? Who do you market to? What can you say about the people that you sell to? What are you marketing to them? Let's make sure you have a good idea of what you do or sell, and if there are different segments within that market, different groups of people are interested in different products or services because you might have different products or services to serve different needs in the market. And are you already known for something? Do you have a social presence? Does your business have a social presence? And what kind of reputation does your business have? So here we are. You're already a third of the way through the first week of training. And up next is video number 3 about your audience and defining your persona. So this is going to be a lot more about your persona and who we're talking to as we sort of narrow in on what are the topics we're going to talk about, where are we going to find the stories to share, and it's a lot easier than you're probably thinking right now. And then we'll talk about ways to use that, things that you can actually put to work right away if you have a pretty good handle on where the material is going right now.